welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. We are really excited today to be here to talk with another author. We love talking to authors, and today we are talking with author Melody Carlson, and this is really exciting to get a chance to talk with her. I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and Jess is here.
Hey guys.
And Melody, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So what people might not understand is this is actually our second time to talk with Melody. And previously last month, we had a surprise interview with Robin Jones-Gunn. And we weren't expecting that. And that was something that you arranged for us and was really a fun surprise. And why don't you tell Melody, why don't you tell everybody what happened?
Well, we were having wildfires here. They were actually in an area that we don't usually have wildfires. We're kind of used to them, but the smoke turned direction and just blew hard on us. And our AQI, which is the air quality count, was up in the 700s, which is really considered almost lethal. And we're living in an apartment above our kind of barn. We call it a barn because we're getting ready to build a house. So it's kind of tight quarters anyway. Mm-hmm. So my husband had the window open. And the day I was supposed to do it, my voice, it sounded like Kermit the Frog. No, it was worse. It sounded like a real frog. And my eyes were just pouring out water. And we were getting ready to leave because it just felt like, you could die here. And so I called my good buddy, Robin Jillian, who's in Maui, where everything's all wonderful, and asked her, because I didn't have the number of the podcasters. I didn't have the publisher. It was too late to call them because they're on the East Coast. I'm on the West. So, yeah, I kind of pulled a fast one on you guys. And I heard it.
Yeah, it was really a fun experience because she was delightful. And we were just like, okay, pivoting to a totally different interview.
Yeah, and as I probably talked about this when we interviewed Robin, but I grew up reading Robin's books, so I knew immediately as soon as I saw her pop up, I'm like, I know who this is, and I was like, well, that's not Melody.
Yeah, so that was very nice of you, above and beyond, to do something like that. I mean, you wouldn't have been, if you had stood us up, you wouldn't have been the first. So. That was very nice.
Her path. So somebody has to step in for me. She's a good one.
Yeah, good choice. Well, we're glad to finally get a chance to talk with you now. And so what we like to do with our authors is we like to ask, what was your journey to becoming a writer? Did you write a lot growing up? Was it something you always wanted to do?
Yes. I remember writing from like really the earliest age. I mean, before I should even have been able to read. And in kindergarten, I had an older sister and she was having a hard time in school. So my mom would do flashcards and stuff with her. And so I kind of learned before my sister did how to write. So I would write these little books and draw illustrations and staple them together. And and then I would just always stories were going through my head. I can remember sitting on the swing set and just doing, sort of story songs as I swing back and forth, and it just was part of my life. And all through school, teachers would often say, "Oh, you're such a good writer, you should write." And even in college, I would, that if I had a choice between, taking a true/false test or, essays, I always go for the essays, because even if I didn't know what I was talking about, I could make them believe that I did.
I'm the same. I would always prefer an essay over, because I second guess myself a lot with multiple choice. I think I know, and then, I don't know.
And I think people do that. You can see other things, well, it could, so yeah.
Yeah, they trick you a lot of times.
Yes.
With those tests.
So you've written over 200 books, which for starters is incredibly impressive. How do you kind of come up with your ideas and keep them fresh after so many?
Well, I hope they're fresh. I mean, who knows? I think ideas are just as limited as people on the planet. And I'm thinking, past, present, future. it's like if any person, if I sat down with them long enough, I think a story would kind of pop up, and it might not be the most entertaining story, or it might be, you know, and I just find people fascinating, and I like to do stories that, you know, really involve characters and getting to know them, and just, you know, peeling back layers of people. And so to me, you know, you could probably challenge me to write about anything, and well, maybe not science fiction, but you never know.
Yeah.
And I have historical, everything.
Yeah, that's cool. Would you say you're a pantser or a plotter?
Oh, definitely a pantser. In fact, I felt like I invented that term 25 years ago. And I remember saying it when we were at a conference, and then I started hearing it after that all the time. Probably somebody was saying it before that, but yeah. And I also had it where somebody asked me, how do you write? I write really fast, and how do you write fast? And I said, I use a Bic. And they go, Bic? You know, what's that? And I said, but I said behind in chair, BIC. Chair.
They're like, what app is that? I've got to find that. Yeah.
Over the years, which is funny, but I thought I made it up.
What was your very first book that you ever got published?
Ironically, it wasn't fiction. I was working with an editor who loved my fiction, and I think I'd written about maybe 5 books, some for teens, some for women. And it was at a time when the publishers weren't that interested, the inspirational houses weren't that interested in fiction. And she said, can you just write a nonfiction book about anything that you know? And I had just been running a group home daycare center, and I had taught preschool for quite a few years. And I said, and my group home daycare center had been really successful. And so I said, what if I do that? And so I put together a proposal. They bought it. And that was the first thing I got published, which is funny. It was a how-to book, and I haven't written a how-to book since, and hope I never have to. But
hey, it gets you in the door, right?
Yeah.
Hey.
So you've written then, you know, for kids, teens, and adults. Do you kind of have a favorite group that you write for, a favorite category?
Not really, because I always feel like whatever I'm working on is kind of my favorite thing. I mean, what I love about writing for teens is I get to be a little more real and relevant. What I like about women's fiction is it gives me a chance to sort of relax a little bit more, have a little more fun, you know, just escape reads and or historicals or things that I wouldn't necessarily do with teen fiction. And I do books for tweens too, which is a little bit different too, and it's still a little more playful, and you try to do what you think they want, you know, give them what is going to, you know, make their day a little bit better is kind of how I think. But yeah, so what I'm working on is my favorite thing.
So yeah, you're really thinking about the audience that you're writing for and what you think they might like as you're coming up with the story.
I try to keep them in mind. I don't write down to, like, if I'm writing to tweens or teens, though, I don't think, you know, these guys are younger. I mean, in fact, some of my teen books, I think grown-ups wouldn't like. I mean, because just a little too, you know, hard and, you know, dealing with topics that, you know, a lot of grown-ups just don't even really want to think about. So
that's interesting. And I think that a lot of times stuff that's not really tailored, especially for those tweens, like you said, that age, I feel like a lot of stuff is they end up with a lot of stuff that's made for people older or people way younger than, but there's not as much that's carefully made for like the 10 to 13-year-olds. I feel like are the ones that get kind of lost in the in everything.
Yeah, they're kind of lopped in that sort of young adult category.
Yeah,
they're not quite there yet.
I totally agree. I just finished a series called Being Zoe, and I can't remember the name of the first book. But it was for tweens. It is for tweens, and it's just a gentler, kinder. But it has things that are contemporary in it. And the little girl that's the main character, you know, she's got kind of a crazy mom who wants to go be a rock star. So she dumps Zoe with her grandparents, and the grandparents are fun but kind of goofy, and it's just her trying to create a new life in a new town. And it's just, I wouldn't write something like that for teens, but it was perfect for tweens.
What percentage do all of your books contain romance, or is there I mean, obviously it's young love if it is, but does it just depend?
It just depends. It seems like most of the contemporary women's does. It wasn't always like that. Like if you go to some of my older books, oh, there might be like a thread of romance. It's ironic because I won the Rita Award, the Romance Writers Award, in 1998, which tells you how old I am. But well, no, it doesn't because
You just experienced. You're experienced.
but I was pretty new in the whole thing, and to be honest, I hadn't really read romance books, and to me, I thought a romance book was a love story. I mean, is it, in my mind, it was the same thing. And the book that I wrote was called Homeward, and it won. And after it won, somebody came up to me who's a good friend now, but she came up to me and looks me right in the eye and she goes, "You shouldn't have won that." And I'm like, "Oh, why?" I was like, "My award." And she goes, "Because that was not a romance." She goes, "You don't even know what a romance novel is." And I was kind of like, "It was a love story?" She goes, "That's not a romance." So then I started doing a little more research and realized there is a difference. There's a little bit of formula to romance that I did not really get. I mean, like one of the things, the hero and heroine are supposed to meet, like in the first chapter, and mine didn't meet till practically the end of the book. So I got what she was saying. Mm-hmm. So I've written a lot like that. And I have done a few that were for romance lines that were the suspense ones. And it was almost too formula for me. I finally just had to bow out. I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 books for them. And having to do it that way was hard. And my mind didn't really want to work that way. I love the idea of romance, but I like a love story.
Yeah, that's really interesting. First of all, that somebody would feel comfortable enough saying that, and that they would be so rigid in their own genre that only the specific formula is allowed to count.
Mm-hmm. And changed in the years following that, and I actually was nominated again, and then I kind of felt guilty, and so the 3rd year I didn't even join. I didn't want to offend anybody. But in years after that, it really did start to change because there was, I think, a broadening of minds, which
trailblazer.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, what do you think makes for a good romance in your mind? However you want to choose to define it.
That's a good question. Well, I think it takes a strong hero and a strong heroine character. It's probably the same thing that any good story has. It takes, some problems, some challenges, some misunderstandings, some compassion, some grace. It's like a formula, but it's a recipe. It's not a formula, It's a recipe. These all contain different things. Some have a little more spice and salt, and some have a little more sugar and honey, and
But I like that analogy.
But I think just having those characters in my mind being people that I like or I'm interested in or could admire, and still have their faults. I don't want them to be perfect. But
so you've had one book become a Hallmark movie all summer long, and we on the podcast had Beth Grossband on, and she said that you pitched the book to Hallmark. Is that accurate?
Yes, yeah. I pitched it through her. But yeah, that was fun. We had a lot of almosts with them because I do, a Christmas book every year, and I just kept thinking, not just me, I get letters from people every year when my Christmas books come out. Why is that not a Hallmark movie?
Yeah.
But there, of course, everybody thinks that. So Hallmark has, a mountain of scripts piled up of Christmas movies. And so that's why I said, let's pick one of your other books. And we went with Snap Books. And then after the success of that one, actually, I'll show you this one. This was my novel this year. I can see it very well. It's got a really cute cover. It's called Happy Camper. And I was writing it kind of as the Hallmark one was getting ready to go into production. So I thought, I'm going to adapt my own script. So I went ahead and adapted that into a screenplay. and kind of got it done towards the end of about this time last year.
Mhm.
And immediate interest in it, had 3 different people that were, including Beth, that were interested in it, and things were starting to move along. And then in March, COVID happened, and it just put brakes on everything. And I was starting to adapt some other things with the hopes that, you know, we could keep the ball rolling. But I mean, the ball stopped rolling for everybody. So
Yeah.
but I do have hopes that maybe there'll be another one. Who knows? That I'll get to do another one, I guess.
Hopefully. Yeah. That's hopefully. How did you feel about the movie, how it turned out? What did you think?
Well, you know, movies are different than books, and to be honest, I'm not like the Hallmark movie expert. I've seen a lot of them, and I felt like it stood on its own. You know, stood up to the other Hallmark movies pretty well. But I'm not the best critic. You guys probably are. But I got to go up there and spend some time on the boat, and I fell in love with the boat. I mean, for me, it was a romance with the boat. It was the most beautiful boat. And I loved the actors that were in it. And I think everybody did a fabulous job. And the script was different than my book. And there probably, you know, being an author, you know, that's the thing that kind of always, well, you know, I don't really know why you changed, you know, this or that. But they explained, you know, their reasons. And I get that. But that did also make me want to do my own adaptation, knowing the rules, you know, and having more of a creative hand in it. So that was a good learning experience.
They gender swapped the characters, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that was fine. But I liked the way it was in my book. Because I felt like, you know, the woman as the chef, she was a strong woman as the chef, you know, to go in and take that whole thing on. And in my book, she was in charge of, because her aunt and uncle got sort of waylaid because he got hurt and everything. So she became in charge of putting that whole thing together. So it wasn't like she was being a wimpy woman. But the gender swap was fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be hard when you have your book babies and then turning them over to other people.
Yeah, and I knew that going in, and I was like, I kept telling myself, it'll be fine, and really it was fine. But like I said, it did make me think, I think I can do this, because I had written some scripts already, and I had adapted a couple of things already. So it wasn't that I didn't know how, it's just I didn't have time at the time it was happening. So
how much do you write? What's your word goal every day?
It's kind of, I say it's kind of like a regular business day. When I'm in, like on deadline, I get it into my office, you know, kind of 9-ish. And everything's a little bit different right now because, like I said, we're living in these apartments, and it's different. I don't have my regular studio, so it's not as inviting to go down into the dark dungeon, which is really the book storage room, with no windows.
Yeah.
But so I kind of do my business, you know, my emails and things like that, and then I get into writing usually an hour later, and put in like probably a good 6 hours, you know, taking a break in between. I used to do, you know, like 8-hour days, but as I get older, I think 6 hours is just fine. And I'm not doing as many books a year as I used to do either, so I have a little more flexible schedule.
Well, let's segue into your book up for this year, which came out last month, I believe, The Christmas Swap. And so tell us a little bit how maybe you got the idea for that, or just kind of how you got started with that book.
Yeah, I'm not even sure exactly where the idea came from. I think it was just, you know, you hear so much about people doing, you know, the vacation swaps and things like that. And I've wanted to do that before, but just the timing has never been quite right for us. And we live in a place where people would come because it's kind of it's a mountain kind of resort area that has forest fires, but not in the wintertime. And we get snow, and it's real pretty and everything. And I've thought, and we used to have a house that looked very much like a cabin. And I used to think this would be a good place to swap, except that I love being in it at Christmas time. And I thought, but what if somebody lived in Arizona, you know, and it was down the heat, and they just really wanted, you know, to do the swap. And then what if they got up there and the guy that was swapping suddenly didn't want to swap because this one particular girl really caught his eye. So this was kind of written almost more like a real romance formula where they met very young. although
Mhm.
they didn't exactly click. I don't know, maybe they did. But so yeah, I just thought that's a fun thing to play with, and he's a songwriter who's very successful, but as many songwriters are, they're not that well known, but they can get very wealthy if they're working with the right people. And
Right.
so he was also a good musician. And the gal that is the other part of the story, his name's West and her name's Emma, and she's a teacher, kind of a sub teacher, and her parents were off in Africa, and she's lonely, and she's also a musician, and really was hoping to pursue a musical career, which had nothing to do with them getting together. That kind of comes out later in the story.
Mhm. Yeah, that
But
surprised me because I thought it was going to be the driving force, but yeah, it really wasn't.
yeah, and I was kind of glad it wasn't, because I think that might have felt a little too opportunistic on her part if she'd known who he was.
Mhm.
That's
But
true.
then it's also kind of too, not knowing that he was really Prince Charming, or that she, yeah, I don't know. But
Mhm.
it was fun. It was fun playing with it and the characters, and I liked the setting of Breckenridge.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Did you have any particular inspiration for Emma and West? Are they based on anybody that you know or anything like that?
Not really. I think they're probably composites. There's people that are in them. Like my sister is someone who started pursuing a musical career kind of late in life, and she plays with a group, and she's got some songwriter friends. So I kind of hear that from her. But just and I live in a town where we have a lot of musicians, and we have, well, normally, but we didn't this year, have what's a pretty world renowned folk festival. So there's a lot of people who live here that are into that sort of thing. And so yeah, I guess there is that around here that I kind of pay attention to and am involved with, but
Do
I
you
barely
think do you think about like maybe an actor that you think oh, this person could play, like, oh, I'm thinking of I don't know, Leonardo DiCaprio when I'm writing a character or whatever, or is it just totally your own vision?
So, sometimes I will do that when I'm having a hard time actually kind of physically seeing them. And I'm trying to remember if I had one for West. Was it like a Matthew McConaughey? Or
Hmm. I can see
I,
that.
it was probably something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that. I got some McConaughey vibes from him.
I could totally see him in the Hallmark world as like a Tyler Hines kind of character. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
And
Yeah.
if they could just put their hands on him, maybe with an old man.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So would you say you're a big holidays person, a big Christmas person?
I have been, when my kids were younger, of course, I would, just put everything out, just bring out all the trimmings and do all of just everything that was traditional, because, I grew up in a home that had a single mom and just one sister. And my mom really didn't care much. She was a teacher, so she spent all her holiday energy with her first grade class, which I love that she did that. But at our house, we had a foil Christmas tree. That
Oh,
was
really? So those
yeah,
are like really retro now.
he still has it.
Yeah, yeah. There'd probably be a hipster like
Yeah.
antique store that would want it.
Yeah.
I bet you my niece might have it. I don't know, because she's really a hipster. But the saving grace for us was that we had grandparents who did the whole works. They were the old fashioned. They lived in a Victorian house, had the big tall tree, did everything. My grandpa pretended like there really was Santa Claus, even though I knew by then that there wasn't. But he convinced me that the reindeer were on the roof, and the big turkey and just everything. So we got that from them, but our home was a little bit stark. So I probably tried to act more like my grandma with my kids.
Hmm.
Give
Yeah.
them the whole works.
Yeah. Yeah. When reading the book, his house, West's house, it seemed more like the Hallmark movie. It was like all decked out and nice and things like that. So
Yeah.
Yes, I was probably thinking this could be a Hallmark movie.
yeah, it definitely had a Hallmark vibe, I thought. And I think there was even a reference at one point to a Hallmark, like it mentioned something about a Hallmark movie somewhere in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think somebody thought the house looked like it was. Well, he had, just done that a music video, Christmas music video for I can't remember the guy's name. Guy something that was the musician that he was working with. So it was all decked out for the guy's music video. And he left the decorations up thinking that his family was coming, but they had other plans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the house actually almost becomes sort of a character in the story. Did you have a particular house in mind when you were creating it?
Probably it was a combination. You know, where I live, there are houses like that. There, you know, we don't live in one, but there are some multi-million-dollar lodges around here that I've been in that are gorgeous and that have, you know, ship that is just amazing. And we have driven through Breckenridge, and I noticed that there was a few of those houses there too, a few more actually than we have here in our little town. But yeah, I've been through some of those.
So where'd you get like the idea for Jillian and Harris as characters? Because Jillian is quite the character. She's something.
She's easy to hate,
to dislike.
but you kind of you get glimpses of who she really is. I mean, obviously she's kind of a spoiled, entitled brat.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the interesting thing is that she and Emma have been friends this whole time. And the reason that they were friends was, you know, things that happened early in the childhood where Jillian really just took over Emma and was just, you know, in her bossy, big sisterly way. You know, I think probably part of Jillian thought that Emma was her puppet, you know, as some people that have, you know, more money and see somebody that looks a little, you know, needy or whatever. But I like Jillian too. I mean, even though, like I said, she's easy to dislike, there were things, like, I almost think that Jillian could have a book too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Around
Yeah, or even her brother, Grant, because I end up feeling very sorry for him because he's just kind of like stuck in the middle of all this mess.
And he kind of became a good sport about it too.
Yeah.
It being a little bit helpful.
Do you think it's tough to keep Wes likable, given that he's lying to Emma this whole time?
You know, people ask me that too. The editors actually asked me that when we were, you know, when I turned it in, and I was like, it is hard. And I went over the book kind of carefully to see, is he really lying to her? Because he didn't actually, well, he said he's the caretaker, but in his mind, he was the caretaker. It's his house.
Yeah. It's not like lie by omission.
Right. That's true. Yeah. That's a tightrope walk. And I just hoped that they would forgive him because he was so in love with her. Like, I think he fell in love with her really almost immediately, which was another thing that the editors weren't buying into. But you know what? I'm married to a man for 42 years who fell in love with me before I even knew his name. I mean, It can happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he'll tell you that. I mean, he'll tell you the whole story, and he still is. Bless his heart.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, when you know, my cousin, she met her husband in March of 2001, and they got married in June and that year, and then they've been married, and they're still married all these years later. I mean, sometimes you go on, sometimes you know when you know you know.
I know, and see, I'll tell you guys a secret. When I sent it in, I had him propose to her at the end of the book.
Uh-huh.
The editors were just like, no, that's too soon. That's too fast. That couldn't happen. But I think it could happen. But I was like, okay, fine. And I took it out. But then the funny thing was christianbooks.com asked me to write kind of a surprise ending that they would include in their version. I don't know if you guys have that version or not. So I ended up kind of rewriting the chapter again that I had taken out, only made it, I think I made it more, it was at New Year's, so not on Christmas. And so they had a whole nother week to fall in love. But now I probably gave away too much, but well, something surprising happens in that.
A spoiler alert, they fall in love. This is a shocker.
Yeah, you know, if it was a Hallmark movie, that would never happen.
There's a few where they, I mean, they've actually tried to sort of move away from the proposals, unless they usually try to do it as like an epilogue. So there'll be like a year that's gone by or something like that. but it depends on
Yeah.
the story. It depends on.
Yeah.
But it's always
Or they'll
fun.
have like it in a sequel or like a trilogy. It's kind of
Yeah.
becoming, I think, a pattern that they're doing with more and more
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now we got to find that other copy of the book because
Yeah.
we didn't get that ending.
Extra.
So, would you rather have the Arizona Christmas or the white Christmas with the snow?
Well, being that I've lived in snow country for more than 25 years, and then we've had all those white Christmases, there's times in my life that I might have gone for the Arizona one. You know,
Yeah.
like 3 feet of snow, and we couldn't get a Christmas tree because they were all sold, and you couldn't get out to the woods because the woods you just couldn't. You know, the vehicles wouldn't go. So there's probably been a few times that you know, Arizona, Maui kind of sound good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the world of Hallmark, you're not allowed to have Christmas in warm climates, but I personally wouldn't mind it myself.
Just you know, maybe once, you know, just to see.
Yeah.
But I'd be worried that I'd get there and I wouldn't feel Christmassy. then what do you do?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like my idea of Christmas is very attached to the idea of snow and cold. Although I live in Indiana, so usually at Christmas we don't have an actual snow, but by then it's usually like a dusting on the ground. But
Lifetime has done a few that are in warm climates. They're crazy like that over there at Lifetime. But well, very cool. Well, we really enjoyed reading the book, and so thank you for letting us read it. And but we have some fun questions, some holiday questions to end off the interview with for you. So, all right. So the first question is, what is your favorite holiday drink?
I really do like eggnog.
Mm-hmm.
I know not everybody does, but I do. I like custard too, so that would explain why I like eggnog.
Yeah, me too.
What is your favorite holiday cookie or treat?
Gosh, I'm going to sound so boring, but I really like a good homemade old-fashioned sugar cookie that's really good. You know, with vanilla and butter, and no, don't give me any of that store-bought stuff. I can make a pretty good one too. But, yeah. It's a little bit of crisp and a little bit of moist and a little bit of decoration.
So it's all about the icing to me. Gotta have good icing.
And I like to make them pretty too. You know, just yeah.
A lot of times the pretty ones though, they don't have as good icing.
Well, they have a little less, and I've played a little bit with using some pastel icing, which doesn't sound that Christmassy, but like you can do like a pale blue snowflake on a sugar cookie with.
Oh yeah,
it's really pretty.
That sounds good. Do you have a favorite Christmas song or carol?
Oh boy, I like a lot of them. I mean, I like the old standards, "The Joy to the World," and just you know. And deck the halls, you know, just because it just puts you in that old merry mood.
Definitely.
What about favorite Christmas movie?
And again, it's going to be, it's like, you know, It's a Wonderful Life. And it's going to be the oldies. I love old movies. So I would probably just start listing off all the goody oldies. And I have them here, you know, like White Christmas. And,
Can't go wrong with that for sure.
Can I tell you a favorite movie too that nobody hardly? It's I'm not sure if it's happened on 6th Avenue. It's something on 6th Avenue, and it's an old movie about this hobo that invites all these people in for Christmas during the it's after the war, and it's a classic. It's really good. Yeah, now my mind's going to start going all these other ones, but I won't drag them all.
Yeah, I think I've heard of this. It happened on 5th Avenue. Is that it?
No, I think it's 6th Avenue. This guy sneaks into a mansion, and then he ends up inviting all these other people that are kind of don't have places to live after the war because there's a housing shortage. And it just gets cuter and funnier, and it's just relationships and
Cool. That's fun. So do you have a favorite holiday tradition that like putting up lights or decorating a tree or giving gifts? What's your favorite thing to do?
Well, I love putting up a tree. We usually go out and get one as tall as the house can handle. And And then I like to just let it sit for a few days without any lights or anything. And then I'll put the lights on, it'll have the lights for just a few days, and then finally I'll decorate it. And then I love giving gifts too, but you know what? It gets harder and harder. People
I know.
it's just not the same as it used to be. I used to love it a lot more. Now it's a little, people have expectations, or they don't want something, or, it's not as much fun.
Well,
I guess I should go find, yeah.
It's harder for adults because most of us can get what we
Mm-hmm.
want. And so how do you surprise them? How do you do something meaningful? And the kids, it's so much fun. I mean, Christmas in general is way better with kids.
It is.
I
have a little grandbaby, so he's not 2 yet, and this will be a lot more fun than last year.
Mm-hmm.
So then I always have a teenager, and the teenager, it's really hard.
Yeah. Definitely.
Do you have a memorable Christmas gift that you've received or that you've given?
Okay.
Everyone?
Like,
yes, and you guys aren't going to believe this. I was 9 months old. It was my first Christmas, and my husband was born on that day.
no way. That's
Yeah.
funny. So he's a Christmas baby, huh?
Say he was God's Christmas gift to me.
Aw, that's very sweet. Very cute.
My parents had a troubled marriage, and I think God knew I was going to need a good man.
That's great. So do you guys have like a birthday cake on Christmas?
We do, and his is really Christmas Day too. So we, when my kids were little, I would just do the whole turkey thing and stuff. And finally, one day, my kids were pretty much grown, and he said, I really don't like turkey on Christmas. I'm like, oh, you told me.
You're like, it's your birthday too.
Yeah.
So I said, what do you like? He said, lasagna.
Ah, there you go.
The last 20 some odd years, it's been Christmas lasagna, birthday lasagna. And we usually invite a few friends over. It usually ends up being more neighborhood. And then he likes carrot cake with cream cheese frosting. So that's
Nice.
that's been our Christmas Day tradition.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And then you can make that ahead of time, so that's nice.
Yeah. It was difficult though when I had one son who was a vegetarian, so I had to make a vegetarian lasagna.
Yeah. All right. Wow. So which is your favorite, Scrooge or the Grinch?
I'm old-fashioned, old school. It'd be Scrooge. Those old Scrooge movies get me.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Very good. Clear lights or colored lights?
Clear.
Okay, good. Would you rather be in a snowball fight or build a snowman?
Build a snowman. Kid, I would have gone for the snowball fight because I was pretty feisty. But now I'd want to get creative with the snowman and, make it into something really unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the artistry.
Are you a good gift wrapper?
If I have enough time, I am a pretty good gift wrapper because my mom, when she was young, had worked at a store as a gift wrapper. So she taught us as children how to do good gift wrapping. And so I know the technique. I'm pretty good at that. But then I also like to take things like a little bit of evergreen and a little bit of this and that. And if it's for somebody special, I won't do it for those people that just come up. Those ones, I don't wrap so carefully because if it's a kid, it's like they don't care. They're just going to tear into it.
Yeah. You could just get like Dora the Explorer wrapping paper, and they don't.
All right, then they're good.
All right, last question. Do you have an ugly Christmas sweater, and what is your ugliest sweater?
I used to, but I don't have it anymore. I probably have some ugly sweaters. They don't have.
Just not Christmas variety, huh?
No.
That's funny. Well, very good. You passed the test. You can keep writing great books. So thank you so much for coming and talking with us. We really appreciate it. And we'll have all of the information. People can get the new book, The Christmas Swap, in the description section. So make sure everybody check that out. And Melody, are you on a social media or anything like that?
Yeah, I have Facebook. I'm not the greatest at social media. I'm not that techie. I should, but a part of me kind of rebels against it too, just because I see it, eating up people that I love's time. And I'm
Yeah.
Mhm.
guys, back off. But my website's melodycarlson.com, and it's outdated, but it has my books on it. I mean, it's just, it needs very, so people laugh at it, and I get emails from people saying, we can help you with your website.
Well, we'll have that in the description section. People follow you. And Jess, where can people follow you?
You can follow me at JessBSW blog on Instagram and Twitter, or check out my website, beneathstillwaters.com.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out, and make sure you're following the podcast, Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave us your ratings and reviews. We really appreciate that. And if you are watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our merch store and our Patreon group. All that information is in the description section. So thanks again, Melody. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you another time soon. So thanks a lot, and Merry Christmas, everybody. Bye.
Bye.